Hello, everyone. This is the ShuttlePod Cast podcast. I am Nic.
And I am Echo.
This is the podcast in which we talk about astronomy at large and space news and fun facts and etc. And we also discuss things casually. So starting off, I'm going to talk about... There is a protoplanet in the Sol system, our solar system. So there's the major planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune. And then obviously there's the renowned poster boy dwarf planet Pluto. Then there's the other dwarf planets, Haumea, Makemake, Ares, Ceres. But I was on some NASA website, there's a bajillion of them. The other day it was a little model of our solar system that you could interact with. And I saw there was an object on the model, one of the larger objects on the model, and when you hover over it, it says Protoplanet. And this caught my attention because if NASA considers this to be a protoplanet, then that must mean that there's a great deal of evidence suggesting that it will form into a planet over the next multiple billion years or so. I'm not actually sure what the timeline looks like for the formation of a planet. I would assume 1 billion or 2 years, multiple billions. This protoplanet is called Vesta. It's really just a very hefty asteroid. Its mean diameter is 525.4, give or take 0.2 kilometers, which is 326 miles.
Pretty dang small for a planet. Aren't you a little short for a star?
Oh, did I get the measurements wrong?
Oh, no. I was going to reference a Star Wars quote, aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? But I didn't know how to incorporate it with protoplanet.
And then Ceres is the next size up. That's the smallest of the minor planets in our solar system. And its mean diameter is 939.4 kilometers, so 583.7 miles. And Vesta is the brightest asteroid visible from Earth, so potentially you could view it with a telescope. I actually have never operated a telescope except to look at the moon, so I don't actually know how to find objects such as that.
That's interesting. How far out is it?
I actually don't know.
That's
I looked it up in a couple different sources, and either that information was not available or I neglected to write it down.
That's interesting, because the only context that I've heard protoplanet before is in, say, a protoplanetary disk, where it's a newly formed star and it has a bunch of matter around it that's not necessarily in the form of a planet, but for some reason, that made me assign myself a block of, say a time frame that planets couldn't form anymore, which obviously now I know is wrong, but no, that is very interesting. Vesta.
I don't know a great deal about the formation of planets, but if NASA considers it a protoplanet, I mean, NASA's like the authority as far as space news goes, or authenticity of factual information outside of academic journal publications, which I suppose may or may not be more authentic than NASA publications, depending on the method in which they are sourcing their information. But the point is that this is really cool, and I thought it was really interesting. That's it. Yeah. Did you have something?
Oh, yes. Actually, what I told you earlier. Dear followers of our various social media outlets, probably especially Twitter, I, Echo, will be touring the historic site where Pluto was discovered, the Lowell Observatory, in the next coming week. And I will be posting about that incrementally once this episode gets out. So feel free to follow our Twitter and look for that. I will be associating fun facts with the various things that I think are very interesting about the place. I will not, unfortunately, be going into the Clark refractor because that would put me out $500 or so. But
Jeez.
Whatever pictures I get, I will definitely share with you all. And yeah.
How many Twitter followers do we even have?
Me and my partner. Too. However,
I'm not even following it. My gosh.
However, if this piques any of your interests, it may grow to more than that. But
Correct.
That will be in a description of that. That will be in an about section here. I think that'll be good.
I also look forward to seeing the photos myself, to be honest.
It should be pretty cool. So I'll be able to spend a decent
Is that where
amount of
you're
time.
considering going to university then?
That is, yes.
How much math do you think you'll need for that?
For what?
For an astrophysics degree. Is it just Calc 1 through 4?
The scariest part of astrophysical math for me is the amount of track you have to keep of the various little nuances in every equation. Almost every equation, forgive me. However, that should be better with practice. But
yeah, I'm sure. Shall we move on to the next point?
You had one about Pluto that might fit well. I don't know.
Sure. On the topic of an observatory in which Pluto was discovered, I actually have a point today about why Pluto is red. If you've ever seen a Pluto, it has very large red tidbits, which makes it a very beautiful planet, of course. I actually had it as my wallpaper for a while because it is such an aesthetically pleasing planet. And obviously Mars is considered to be the red planet, and on Mars the coloring agent is iron oxide, which is more commonly known as rust. On Pluto, however, the color is caused by hydrocarbon molecules that are formed when ultraviolet radiation from the sun interacts with methane from the atmosphere, and the sun creates compounds called tholins, which drop to the ground to form a reddish gunk.
Oh.
And even more interestingly, the, quote, Lyman alpha radiation, unquote, glow is diffused through the atmosphere to fall from all directions onto Pluto. So the hydrocarbon molecules can form on the dark side of the planet as well. And I personally find that to be much more interesting than rust.
Oh, because you're so used to seeing rust on Earth as well, probably. If you've ever been to a place with rust. Pretty much anywhere.
Well, I mean, also, the process of iron rusting is more simplistic than hydrocarbons.
Yeah.
I mean, the ultraviolet radiation hitting methane, turning methane into hydrocarbons, into tholins, into gunk that falls to the planet's surface. And then, obviously, parts of it are just, I don't even know what they're composed of. I don't think anyone does, but we'll find out. That's the exciting part. We will find out.
Let's see. I will go ahead and congratulate NASA Juno. On August 5th, 2011, NASA's Juno spacecraft launched on a 5-year interplanetary journey that took it to the giant planet Jupiter. August 5th, 2011 to 2021 makes 10 years, so happy 10th birthday to the Juno spacecraft's wonderful mission at exploring the red planet. We have received many.
Correct.
If any of you may recall, I know I was super excited about this. This was the spacecraft that went semi-viral when it was being developed, in that there were 3 minifigures that went aboard. One of Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei, the pioneer of telescopic astronomy, and the Roman god Jupiter next to his sister wife, Juno. This has observed many things, including the famous Great Red Dot along with several moons around Jupiter. Congratulations to Juno, and
Congratulations to Juno. Full send.
long live the mission.
Long live the mission. What's its life expectancy?
Well, it does not say on this article, but it does have upcoming deadlines up to 2024, where it will make encounters with various moons, including Io and Europa, actually, in 2022.
Oh, that's fun.
Those are two
Europa
of my
has
favorite moons.
quite a bit of buzz talk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not actually sure why. I think there was something about life below the ice or something.
Right, yeah. It is intriguing because of the amount of liquid water that is geothermally heated to the right temperature to support organic life as we know it, as well as a very, very thin yet still noticeable oxygen atmosphere.
You, my friend, are well educated in the ways of astronomy. Go Juno!
Go Juno!
On the topic of there being water on moons, they have detected the possible presence of water on the dayside surface of our moon. And this was confirmed by NASA's Stratospheric Observatory for the Infrared Astronomy, SOFIA, in 2020. The study's authors were Bjorn Davidson and Sonia Hosseini. Observations of the lunar surface show that the amount of water decreases before noon and increases in the afternoon, which would indicate that the water is moving from one side to the other throughout the day. To test the theory that shadows play a role in the water being released and removed from the moon's surface and exosphere, Hosseini is leading a team developing small sensors to measure very faint signals of ice and water. The heterodyne OH Lunar Miniaturized Spectrometer, or HOMS, is being developed to be used on a small stationary lander that may be sent to the moon. They will detect measurements of hydroxyl, which is a molecular cousin of water. And I thought this was interesting that water could continually be evaporating into the moon's exosphere and then resublimating onto the surface of the moon as the shadows change throughout the day. It's a very interesting discovery, and they want to mobilize the modules quickly because the moon is receiving a lot of activity from various rovers and other operations conducted on the surface of the moon by various countries. And the goal, I don't have a direct quote, but one of the study's authors just said that their goal is to send the rovers up before a great deal of disturbance happens to the surface because it could affect the amount of water evaporating into the moon's exosphere. So I thought that was really interesting.
I remember reading about that and getting super excited. Man, give it a couple of years. There's going to be so much cool science done on the moon. Hopefully, including that. I believe we knew about the dark, the night side of the moon being able to contain water ice. But yeah, I remember these shadows were especially interesting because of, I suppose because nobody would have guessed.
Well, evidently they guessed and they were correct. The scientific method never fails.
The scientific method.
Except when it dies.
Make a guess until it's wrong. Do what you must because you can.
We will be scientists, my friend.
All right. After one scrub, the Northrop Grumman Cygnus spacecraft has arrived at the ISS successfully, carrying an assortment of science experiments as well as food, among other things, which Nic enlightened me.
According to an email from NASA I got, it says that the spacecraft arrival brings more than 8,200 pounds of science experiments, crew supplies, hardware for future spacewalks, and an order of pizza.
I haven't heard of any instance where astronauts on the ISS have received quite such time-sensitive food, but
yeah, I would say that honestly, they got it for free because it did not arrive in 15 minutes.
Hopefully, the taste reduction that one suffers in zero gravity did not inhibit that experience very much, but I for one, I would love a pizza in space. Sounds awesome.
Well, regardless of the taste reduction, it had to be a whole lot better than rations.
Then what?
Rations. I could not imagine eating pre-prepared rations every single day.
I mean, yeah.
I'm sure they're getting paid big money though, so big money plus a really cool job.
Do you know what pizzeria happened to be responsible for this?
No clue. Let me see if it gives me the information.
I mean, if it is a corporate thing, it would be a hell of a PR stunt.
Nope, does not say.
I see. Well, at any rate. That's it. Just at any rate.
At any rate, yeah.
At any rate, space pizza.
Space pizza. That could be in the episode name, Space Pizza.
Oh yeah, that's catchy.
Too bad that I forgot to put the stupid space squid in the first episode.
Yeah. I think there were varying titles on the first episode.
I don't actually know what
stuck with yours.
I know that the one on YouTube conflicts with the one on everywhere else.
Yep. That would be my fault.
It's not necessarily a fault. Nobody cares. Yeah. As long as it says episode 1. Let me actually view what I hope I did not I hope I did not put space squid in the first episode. Rover selfies. Okay, I am safe.
There we go.
Rover selfies. Anyway, moving on to the next point. The rise in oxygen on early Earth has been linked to the changing rotation rate of the early Earth. Mm-hmm. The day length was possibly as brief as 6 hours during the planet's infancy, and when increasing day length gradually slowed over time, which made the days longer, boosted the amount of oxygen released by photosynthetic cyanobacteria, which is some of the first organisms to emerge on the planet. It's blue-green algae, which is considered a pest today for the most part, the bane of aquarium enthusiasts. And they, according to lead authors Judith Klatt of the Max Planck Institute and Arjun Chanu of the Leibniz Center for Tropical Marine Research, so these are marine biologists, they found that longer day length increases the amount of oxygen released by photosynthetic microbial mats at the bottom of Lake Huron. That's a Great Lake, isn't it? I think that's one of the Great Lakes in Canada. I'm not entirely sure. The Earth is said to be 4.54 billion years old, and I do not have that memorized. That's crazy. It's hard to even imagine, and it makes me wonder if the Earth is still slowing.
I believe it is, lest I heard from anybody. But
I wonder what the rate is.
I mean, obviously from a 24-point decimal hour.
Yeah, trillionths of an
inhabitant.
Hour.
It seems insane that life as we know it endured a day that was 4 times as fast as ours.
It's not really life as we know it, but
life is algae.
Yeah, life as algae knows it.
Hopefully algae knows itself. That would be, I believe that would be something that disqualifies it from being alive. If it does not self-preserve, then we have a problem. But my mind automatically defaults to some rapidly spinning Earth-sized planet, rocky world perhaps around another star that would live life totally different from us.
The algae people.
Or just perceive time totally different from us. Yeah. And then there's
I do wonder
planets, which are just
if there was like an intelligent race of humanoids on a planet that spun so quickly, and we like met them or something, diplomatic relations would be impossible because they'd sleep like every 3 hours.
Yeah. Be even harder than scheduling an episode recording.
So much harder. My gosh.
For those of you at home, there's a 2-hour difference between us, but we have such varying lifestyles that often on my end, admittedly, there will be things that get in the way of actually getting a recording done. But
I believe this is the 4th time that we've sat down to record this episode. We break it up into chunks as well, but
a planetary star system 35 light years away, named L98-59, is home to some of the most interesting exoplanets that we've ever discovered, one of which being the smallest ever discovered yet. One of the Earth-like planets discovered around this system is less than half the mass of Venus. This is rather interesting because it's such a small rocky world. We haven't really been able to find such things around giant bright stars. So if these observations are confirmed, there was a certain number of uncertainties about the discoveries in this planetary system with TESS. I think that would be phenomenal. I mean, even at some point, I've talked about the James Webb Telescope and how that's able to see so much better around other stars. If that were able to discover, say, second Mercuries, that would be amazing. And then there's obviously the desire to know as much about an outside system as we do the inside system, because we don't know how similar we are to the rest of the universe. And I mean, the possibilities are endless, but really it's the more we know, the more at home it feels.
Sure.
If that makes any sense.
I'm actually not familiar with the size of Venus in comparison to the average size of a planet. I mean, assuming that we even have a accurate estimation of what average for a planet looks like. But
well, as far as the rocky worlds go, it is on par with Earth, actually. It has the same surface gravity.
Just smaller diameter.
I mean, 9 point something meters per second squared. It stays within that uncertainty. But I have another fun fact about Venus, but it's not related at all to the exoplanets. But I learned that it spins backwards, which is why its day takes so long.
It spins backwards. Interesting. So are you saying that all the planets in the solar system spin the same direction? Mm-hmm. I did not know that.
That I know of, that I remember off the top of my head.
On the topic of Venus, evidence of volcanoes on Venus have been found in old Magellan spacecraft data. It is not known...
Magellan, that was the lander, correct?
Say what?
That was the lander, correct?
I'm not entirely sure. I believe it collected stereotopography data, so I believe it would be an orbiter to collect topography. But I don't know anything, so I could be wrong.
It was not a lander.
Okay, yeah, that's what I would have guessed. Anyway, it is not known if the geologic activity was in the past centuries or within tens of millions of years from today, but that is considered geologically recent. It has been 31 years since the Magellan spacecraft entered orbit around Venus. According to Planetary Science Institute Megan Russell and Katherine Johnson, Johnson says the question of whether Venus has had geologically recent or ongoing volcanism has been an enduring enigma from the Magellan mission. We still have no smoking gun regarding this, but more and more lines of evidence suggest a recently and potentially currently active planet. Russell says, instead of looking at the surface of the volcano or flows, we look at how the volcano deforms the ground around it. In response to the weight of the volcano, the ground around it bends, like flexing a plastic ruler. And this was performed while Russell was a grad student, so it is a pretty solid way to kick off her career. Is a very phenomenal piece of research.
Oh, yeah.
This high-resolution stereotopography data set was generated by other researchers to look at volcanoes at the edge of a 350-kilometer surface across the Mighty corona. And a corona in this context is a circular feature surrounded by a ring of cracks, and they are thought to be large faults. Some coronae, lava flows, and volcanoes are observed in these structures, just not active. So time will tell what the research yields. I found it to be very exciting.
Yeah.
Because for so long now, we've just thought that Venus has been geologically dead, right? So...
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to think of it similar to Mars, but yeah, the fact that we know now, or at least have a lead to knowing.
There's evidence, yeah.
It's awesome. Venusian volcanoes. It's a cool 2-word set. Alright, should I talk about Lowell? I know I said I was going to do a thing with it, but that
The observatory?
didn't really work. So yeah, I can just talk about my experience now. Right.
For those of you that just heard about it a few minutes ago in the podcast, we're speaking about this now on a different day after he has visited the observatory. So he's about to share about it.
Well, let's see where to start. Some of you may have received the hint on Twitter, but though I did not expressly tell you that that is a picture of, and it'll be on the video too, that is a picture of the Clark Refractor. It is a 42-inch, or was a 42-inch telescope that was kind of Lowell's pride and joy. It was the biggest one on the campus for a long while, until the mirror ended up cracking. But if any of you do not know, Lowell is one of the scientists behind the observatory that discovered Pluto. It was in the early 1900s when calculations were given out that there was a certain place in the sky to look to account for the irregularities in Uranus and Neptune's orbits. That place ended up being 5 degrees off from where Pluto actually was, which was amazing math. But all that aside, touring the facility, it was amazing. You got to... I went on what was called the Dark Skies tour. You got to... While it was dark, and there were red lights everywhere, so there wasn't a lot of pollution to get rid of the stars you'd see in the night sky. You got to walk by the office that the Eureka moment where Pluto was realized to exist happened, where it was basically confirmed that it was a body in the solar system, and a quite large one at that, relative to the rest of the dwarf planets. But after that, you walk past and find yourself on a 1 inch to 1 million mile scale trail of the solar system, where you start with the closely bunched together rocky planets and then end up near the asteroid belt in Jupiter and all the way to Pluto, which, granted, is not a planet, but very interesting scale-wise to see the actual uphill walk that it took to get there. That walk leads right directly out to the Clark Refractor, which I've just talked about, and then from there, my favorite part, we got to go to an open deck that was built in 2019, so it's their most recent part of this observatory. And there was a couple refractor telescopes, some with eyepieces, some that were operated by a camera and a computer, operated by a computer with a camera, including the now biggest, telescope on the campus, a Dobsonian refractor with a 32-inch mirror diameter. I looked myself through it to see the Swan Nebula, which was the object of the hour. However, probably more deep space objects are visible through that beautiful telescope. Yeah, it had the fan cooling off the mirror and everything. But there was that. There was a couple other where you got to look at the gas giants. There was one where you got to see a planetary nebula, and one where it was actually so versatile that you could photograph the core of the Andromeda Galaxy.
Really? Jeez. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I thought the nebula was crazy, but the core of the Andromeda Galaxy. Is it crisp?
Yeah, granted, it was a very high exposure shot, and it had quite a few stars, because, you need a lot of stacking to actually see the central black hole of anything. Yeah, it was legit. You could see that massive, Milky Way sized galaxy. It was awesome. And then from there we went to a very calming astronomy tour, basically just pointing out where prominent stars were and giving mythologies behind certain constellations, the things that will rock minds if you haven't heard the fact for a while, like the North Star Polaris being eventually shifted over the course of 24,000 years to Vega. It was amazing. I loved it so much. That was pretty much the end of it, but I did end up nagging a very, very adorable stuffed animal of the Polaris trinary star system and the book Chasing New Horizons, which I will be reading for quite a bit. I can already tell that I'm probably going to definitely recommend it. Yeah, it had a Polaris... What? Polaris A, Polaris B and Polaris AB, which is a yellow giant and two blue-white dwarf main sequence stars.
Is it anthropomorphized?
It has a face, and it has arms and legs, and it lights up. I just love it so much. I gave it to my partner, actually. She's enjoying it a lot. But
are you both space fanatics?
She is a better biologist, and she uses that to her advantage whenever it comes to things. But yeah, she knows stars better than I do, admittedly.
That's funny.
I had to look up quite a few stars when she was telling me about her favorite ones. Though, if any of you would like to look online, look up Zeta Ophiuchi, Zeta space Ophiuchi. It is a beautiful star with actually a trail of hydrogen behind it that makes it look quite like a bow. Tangential to Lowell, but I definitely recommend you look it up. Listeners at home. I do not have any favorite star systems because I am not half as educated on astronomy as you are. I run an astronomy podcast, but the extent of my astronomy knowledge is encyclopedic, so I'm not incredibly well versed. I used to know all the different types of stars and their temperatures and stuff, but that has been lost with time. So my next topic is the world's first reprogrammable satellite. On July 30th, on board the Ariane 5 rocket, it lifted off from French Guiana. Guinea.
I don't know how to pronounce
Ariane 5, French
Ariane.
Guinea.
Okay, French what?
French Guinea.
Guinea. Okay, Guiana. It's funny. And most satellites are hardwired to serve one function, but the Eutelsat Quantum allows users to tailor communication to their needs, and it can be reprogrammed from a fixed distance of 35,000 kilometers, which is 21,700 miles. I did not do that in my head, which allows it to respond to changing communication and various demands needed by the users. So I believe it's just a communication satellite, but reprogrammable is still very interesting. I don't believe it's pioneering any new technology so much as it is just the first time that it's happened.
You said it's primarily a communication satellite, right?
Evidently, yeah.
So, I mean, that would be tailoring that to specific needs. What would that look like, I wonder? I don't know much about space communication, evidently.
Well, it could just be radio communication, internet communication. Perhaps it can be reprogrammed for television, assuming that satellite television will be around in a... television is dying. It's so weird. Like, I grew up with, like, those big box TVs, and there just weren't streaming services. Yeah. And
the ones that, like, you would touch and then you get a static
shock.
Yeah,
those ones. I loved getting the static shock. I'd turn them off deliberately so I could just run my hand across it. One time I put a magnet up to one, and then
you scientist!
It made a giant green spot, and I was like so excited. So I went to my parents. I was like, "Look at what I did to the TV." It fixed itself after a few hours, but they were really mad at me. As far as, I don't think TV satellites are going to be around very long, though, because TV is a dying industry.
Yeah, most of the income that cable companies make are from actually their internet providing services, which is kind of
really that's interesting.
Yeah, let me double check that, because
I mean, it makes sense, right? They provide internet so they can provide cable. It's the same concept, really. You're granted, like, cable television is like sub HD. It's like 480p.
Yeah. Let's see.
I remember I went to a friend's apartment. There were two of us and then myself, two people and then myself, just in the apartment hanging out. And this was a while ago. There was cable television on, so we were going to go do something with the night or do something enjoyable. And then Space Jam? No,
with the
Lola Bunny basketball ordeal. Space Jam. Okay, yeah, and we sat down and watched the whole thing because my friend wanted to see Lola Bunny. It's funny. And then that was the whole night, so that was fun.
Is it the new one or the old one?
The old one.
Ah, yes.
He was really mad about how
Pristine
they changed Lola Bunny.
Goodness.
I think they just made her less sexually desirable.
I mean, would Warner Brothers really want to make another generation of people whose first crush was Lola Bunny? I don't know.
Right, yeah, that's how the furries began. Actually, the furries, you might not know this, but the furries began at Star Trek convention. I only remember reading it in passing, but evidently that was when the community first came to prominence. I guess evidently the theme of different species coming together to put away their differences was taken too literally.
That's interesting, though. I'm trying to remember the name of the cat people from Star Trek. That's what popped into my head immediately after you said that.
Cat people?
Oh, Kate.
Anyway, the ISS, right? That's your next topic?
It sure is. Alright, well, just to update you guys, right now we're in a little bit of a tug-of-war between the thrusters firing on both the science module and Nauka. That's from Mission Control Communicator Drew Morgan telling U.S. astronauts from Houston at around 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, when the Nauka vehicle's thrusters were unexpectedly misfired, tilting the ISS as much as 45 degrees around its center of rotation. Very fortunately, the problem was fixed. However, it was over an hour that happened, and I can only imagine how scary it would be to be an astronaut or to be one responsible of controlling the...
As far as things go, it would be incredibly stressful to be someone on the space station just knowing that, I mean, at that point, once it's spinning out of control, you basically know that your life is over, even if it's not and everything's fine. Like, that's the only thing going through your mind, I'm sure. Well, I'm not an astronaut, but there's only like a thin layer of metal between them and death, basically. Or well, fiberglass too, and whatever the other stuff is.
Yeah.
And I, assuming that it wasn't some arbitrary and entirely coincidental technological error, I imagine that the person who put together the system that malfunctioned lost their entire career, because obviously the space agency would need someone to blame, some scapegoat to shift liability off of themselves. So,
well, hopefully it wouldn't be just one person responsible for an entire thruster.
We'll see. I mean, well, we won't see. We'll never know, but...
Well, yeah, from a rotational standpoint, the Nauka module generally docks in a place where it's easy to rotate. You have the axis with the solar panels and the radiators, and then you have Nauka being less of a distance away from the center of mass of the space station. So it would be easier to turn on a separate axis. Don't come after me. So, I mean, yeah,
when was this?
So the thruster doesn't necessarily need to fire at full thrust. This was on... so this would have been July 29th. July 29th was a Thursday. Oh, okay, so the article was updated a week later.
NASA's official update,
which would have been
was July 29th, and then there was August 3rd, where they... August 3rd was when they confirmed that the station is in good shape and operating normally.
I see.
45 degrees out of attitude. That's crazy. As far as things go,
it's pretty fast. That's 2/3 of a degree per minute.
So it's not. I imagine the astronauts did not feel the spin, but
well, if they were near the distance from the center of rotation, then they probably wouldn't have. So if they were anywhere on the axis with the solar panels, then I doubt they would have, or if they just stood still for an exceeding amount of time, then they would have seen the walls sort of climb around them. But I doubt that wouldn't be normal.
They're in the little...
because they don't know if they're climbing or not.
I watched a tour of the ISS once, and there was this little bit that they could climb down in that showed the Earth. They could just watch the Earth spinning below them.
Cupola.
I imagine they could just watch that slowly move out of view of the window.
Hey guys, I'm seeing something weird.
Crazy.
Probably also one of the external cameras.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they monitor that.
A fire from Nauka, which means science in Russian.
Oh really? More you know. Nauka. I will not remember that. Is that all the material that we were going to cover then?
I believe so. I guess I suppose I could plug this. I'm going to be making a Kerbal Space Program tutorial in the upcoming future, probably over the next week. I have it all scripted. If you want, you could stay tuned for that.
Also, while we're plugging things, please join the Discord server. You can talk to Echo and me in person, and buy our merch.
Excuse you.
We're quite that famous.
Yeah.
Renowned.
And by merch, we mean that you can go to a t-shirt store and buy a shirt and put a design on it.
Right, yeah. Go to a t-shirt, I can't talk. Go to a t-shirt store and just think of me when you buy it, and
think of our voices.
Think of our voices. Just imagine how proud of you we are for supporting us in spirit, if not financially. Who knows, if this podcast blows up, we might have a Patreon. We're getting a lot of downloads, but I question if those decreased after the last episode. Hopefully, if someone subscribes to the podcast, it automatically downloads the podcast to their device if they're on iTunes or Google Podcasts. So
beware.
Yeah, once this episode comes out, you will hear my nice, crisp, beautiful, honey voice.
All right, yeah, so the link for that will be in the various descriptions that this podcast will be uploaded. Of the websites that this podcast will be uploaded.
The link to the Discord, not the Kerbal Space Program.
The link to the Discord,
yeah.
Right, yeah.
Cool, alright, so it's Nic and Echo signing off.
Farewell.
Farewell. Live long and prosper, dear listeners.